So make sure that you say hello, however you're watching. Radio audience, welcome to you. TV audience, happy to have you all this morning. Hey, we got FISM contributor Mark Minnella. He's going to join me later in the show. Can't wait to speak with him. It's going to be a good time. We'll have him on later. We're also going to have Rachel Barkley of the National Center for Public Policy Research. She'll join me to discuss the landscape of public health as it relates to disability coverage and some other issues going on right now. You're going to want to stay tuned for that, folks. We'll get your questions and comments as well. You can put those into the chat. We always obviously prioritize our chat family, but if you put them up on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, anywhere else, we'll try to get to those as well. Also, apparently Meta has been caught guilty of cultivating and allowing AI bots to partake in sexually inappropriate language for minors. That sounds, Sam, to me initially like satire, but it is in fact true.
What we call that is not good.
Yeah, that's not good. Exactly right. That's called not good. We'll discuss why, and also why this is kind of par for the course for the Facebook parent company, unfortunately. So we'll talk about that later on. But partners, just a couple reminders for you. Make sure to check out the partner commentary. It was really good this week, folks, and I hope you got a chance to read it. I'll say a couple things about it later on this segment if we have time. And also, I do want to remind partners, please check your email, check the partner alerts page. We sent out an alert yesterday. Very important for you to read that alert. We'll talk more about that later on in this week, but make sure that you go ahead and read that whenever you have the chance to. Sam, let's kick it off here with the big story that we saw yesterday. It seems like companies are kind of not getting the hint that Communist China is, in fact, our mortal enemy. Trump seems to know this, but American companies don't seem to. They're not ditching China in spite of these massive tariffs that Trump is ready to levy on them. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, remind you, it's an over 50% tariff rate, which is absolutely insane. And yet, according to a recent study, this was reported by the New York Post, roughly 3 out of 4 American companies operating in China right now say they currently have no plans at all to get out, at least for right now. That same poll also found that about 50% also said they have plans to actually invest in China this year, though it should be noted that many are scaling back their investments and shifting their supply chains at the same time. Part of the issue could be that Trump's ever-changing tariffs are still up in the air, especially now that a federal appeals court has ruled against them, likely setting up a major showdown before the Supreme Court. The former head of the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai told Politico that companies are, quote, paralyzed by the shifting tariff policy. He said, quote, "It's not the tariff itself, it's the uncertainty over whether the tariffs are coming up or going down, and that's what leads to paralysis."
You know, that's interesting, Sam. I can probably see a lot of companies having that sentiment too, and I certainly don't blame them for that. It's trying to build a foundation on shifting ground right now. And to be honest, it's not even necessarily Trump's fault. It's kind of just the way that this stuff plays out. You know, you're waiting for deals to be struck, waiting for things to happen. We had a deal, I'm understanding correctly, with China at one point, and then China pulled out of it. And so that kind of thing is going to happen. But Sam, tell me this. Do you think that some of these companies are doing this almost as like a political way to sort of maybe spite Trump, or maybe feel like they're trying to get back at him? Do you think any of that's happening right now?
I doubt that's the case. Maybe some of them, but I think most of them are interested in making money. You got to think, it's only 1 year into this thing, and they just don't know. Is it going to cost less money just to eat the tariff right now, when maybe a year from now the tariff's going to be a lot less? Or is it going to save them more money just to move to the United States? I think just based on the shifting analysis, they really don't know how to factor these things in right now. Yeah.
Well, I hope that you're right there, Sam, because it would be really concerning if 3 out of 4 American companies choose to stay in operational good graces with our mortal enemy. So yeah, it's interesting there for sure. I think that type of thing would deeply hurt their bottom line if they decided to stay in good graces with Communist China. You know, Sam, you had mentioned in all likelihood we're going to see a major showdown with the Supreme Court with this one. We probably will. I hope we see that sooner rather than later, actually, because we want to get these things figured out. That and the Federal Reserve nonsense as well. But folks,
we should. Trump said he's doing an emergency appeal on this whole thing with the tariff, so we'll have to see. But I think we're going to have an answer on this relatively soon.
Yeah, hopefully so. And you know, folks, speaking of that, I think it's a good time as any now to storm the throne room of God with prayer for the highest court in the land. Oftentimes, when I pray for our country, I tend to think of praying for the president, whether I agree with his policies or not, and depending on who's in the White House, even too. I do remember to pray pray for the president, the vice president. Sometimes I forget to pray for the high court, though, and I think it's a good thing for us to do, to pray for the Supreme Court. There's a lot of things happening right now, folks. You got the Fed stuff happening. You got this tariff stuff. And there's still a chance, and I'm hoping and praying for this, Sam, that maybe, just maybe, we see the case that opens the door to the downfall of Obergefell, one of the most disgusting rulings we saw in this country back in 2015. I say, may it be so. I hope that that does happen, and we see the issue of gay marriage, which is in and of itself kind of an irony and an oxymoron, because it is in fact not marriage if it's gay marriage. Marriage is only between one man and one woman for one lifetime. So what they have is not actually a marriage, but nonetheless, that's just what it's called. May it be so. May it be so that we see the end of it. I'm certainly, Sam, concerned personally about more than one member of this court, not just the 3 liberal justices. I'm not sure what to think of all the conservative ones either. So I think praying that common sense and true justice would win the day is probably a good prayer to pray.
And you're talking about specifically the gay marriage case, right?
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, with that one in particular. With the Fed stuff, with the tariff stuff, who knows?
Right.
Who really knows?
With the gay marriage, I'm pretty sure I can guess how most people are going to rule. With the Fed and the tariff, I really don't know, especially the tariff.
Exactly right. And folks, keep in mind, all of this that we're talking about, Sam and I were talking, technically right now it's hyperbolic because none of these cases have gone to the Supreme Court yet. But I think we're hoping and praying that they would for sure, and that we get an answer, and that it's the right answer. Well, interesting stuff, Sam. Thanks for bringing that up here. Let's take a look now at what the markets did yesterday, folks. So off the heels of the weekend's latest news on these Trump tariffs, which again, we're waiting to see if that goes to the court, the markets kicked off a historically volatile month with a certain amount of volatility. Pretty on brand there. By midday, all 3 indices were bleeding. Tech-heavy NASDAQ was down the furthest. The bleeding kind of subsided later on in the day as the markets inched a little towards the flat line. They still finished negative, but not as bad as they were early in the day. The Dow Jones finished 0.5% negative. The S&P 500 finished about 0.2% negative, and the NASDAQ was the biggest loser of the day, but wasn't a terrible day overall. Things considered, it was down about 0.4 percentage point. Now, this morning, the markets are relatively mixed here as we're sitting before the opening bell here. The Dow Jones priced in to open 0.25% negative. The S&P is 0.33% positive, and the NASDAQ going even higher, up right around 0.2% positive that it just hit right now. The big thing that the markets are looking at this morning is that it appears that Alphabet stock is actually rising higher in pre-market trading. Looks like Google was avoiding a breakup in that antitrust case. Sam, I think this is something that we were looking at even back a couple of years ago, trying to figure out what's
Seems
going
like this
on
is always a thing. There's always an update to this. Don't forget, we also have Jolts coming out.
Yes, we do. And Sam, does sorry, you'll have to help me out with this. Does that break
10 o'clock?
Breaks 10 o'clock. All right, so probably won't be able to talk about it today, folks, obviously, because the show will be over, but we'll make sure to get that tomorrow. So the markets will be looking at that as well. A couple quick hitters here. Yesterday, we saw Warren Buffett a little disappointed at the Kraft Heinz split. Their shares did fall 5%. Sam, the reason for that, obviously, is because Warren Buffett is invested in them, obviously, and so, of course, he's going to be disappointed with
27% stake, right?
Yeah, that's through Berkshire Hathaway. I'm not sure what his personal investments are or how that relates to that, but it's through
And
through
if my understanding is right, he's the mastermind behind those two conglomerates coming together. So maybe he's taking it a tad personal.
Yeah, absolutely. Elsewhere, folks, it looks like 69% of people are now losing faith in the American dream. Sam, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the in the next segment there, as we look at kind of the continuing housing crisis that some are now calling an emergency. We'll make some sense of that a little bit later on there. But yeah, it certainly does seem like the American dream, at least on the surface, feels out of reach for a whole lot of people. Meanwhile, the U.S. is still working on trade deals despite the court ruling, so there's still some things happening there with that. And also, the United States did revoke Taiwan Semiconductor's fast-track China export status. Folks, listen, there's a lot of things that are happening this morning, but one thing I wanted to share with you, this is a quote from our partner commentary that we had out today. It's a great quote. I encourage you, go read the partner commentary. Here's what it says, quote, "Through it all, Scripture reminds us that God is sovereign over every shift in society and economy." I don't always think about this, maybe you don't as well, that God is sovereign over the economy. Have you ever thought about that? God is the one who is sovereignly in charge of our economy. That should give us great comfort, folks, as we see things that from our perspective look bad or look good. Listen, God is in control of all of it, and he's doing some great things through it. And if you are faithful to him and obedient to him, he's going to bless you. And the blessing might come in this life. It will certainly come in the next, though. Whether it comes in this life or not, it might not come in this life. It will certainly come in the next. We can be confident in that. All right, folks, on the other side of this break, we'll talk about what Meta's doing, the interesting and concerning stuff, that and more when we get back after this.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life, and some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay, or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
I will end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender.
Diversity, equity, inclusion. Hiring on the basis of race and gender. You don't see the problem here?
What was once a widely practiced program is now being abandoned at an incredible rate.
We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based.
Companies are making big changes.
Money talks, so why not have it advocate for what you believe in? Get started today at financialissues.org.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. On top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn.
Then they sat me down. If you were to die today, do you think you would go to heaven? And I was like, no. Keeping the child was my first stepping stone, and ever since then, God has cleaned me up from the inside out.
Help support women in need. Go to preborn.com/FISM.
Good to be here with all you folks on financial issues. Thankful for each of you. We'll say hello to some folks here in the chat. Hello, George. Good to see you. Lisa, good to see you as well. And Claude. Let's see who else. Debbie. Debbie, thanks for your encouragement. Yeah, amen. I say amen to that. He is in control of the economy. It's a good thing. God is in control indeed. Robert, good to see you this morning as well. Alan asking a good question. Alan, you're asking about using stop loss orders on your positions. Alan, I haven't really thought too much about that personally. This is me speaking here, folks. So this is me in my position where I'm in right now as a young investor with the understanding that I'm going to have a long time horizon. I don't really think too much about the kind of the micro level issues of buying a certain position when it hits a specific price or different things like that. My thought with it is when I look back on my portfolio in 15 to 20 years from now, that stuff's just not really going to matter. You know, it's better for me not to concern myself over specific things like that. Now, Alan, you might be in a position where maybe that stuff does matter a little bit more for you. Maybe you're a little bit older and you're thinking more about, okay, how am I going to use this portfolio as it begins to generate income for me? Something like that. The position I'm in right now is I'm just thinking, growth, long-term,
general dollar cost averaging.
Exactly right. General dollar cost averaging, the works like that. Alan, I hope that makes sense for you, brother. So I don't particularly think too much about it. So that's a good question, Alan, and I do appreciate you asking. I hope it can be helpful for you. Sam, let's take a look here at what Meta is doing. Unfortunately, it's really bad.
I was going to say, it's not too exciting, really so do we have to?
It's really bad. So I'll ask you for your forgiveness if a rant comes out at some point in this. But Sam, go ahead. What is Meta doing that is just so wonderful here?
Well, according to a Reuters report, Meta's internal documents, so this is not Reuters inferring anything, this is coming straight from the horse's mouth on their AI behavior guidelines. Meta says, quote, "It is acceptable to engage a child," again, their words, "in conversations that are both romantic or sensual, though the documents do note it's unacceptable to describe sexual actions to a child." So this is a devastating report. I looked at the documentations, what they said was acceptable versus unacceptable. Really not too much of a meaningful distinction between the two. Yes, one's a tad more graphic, but let me put it this way, Seth. If you or I, or really any adult, spoke to a child the way the AI was speaking to a child in a way that's quote unquote appropriate, everyone would say we should go to jail, or at least get a restraining order or be put on some sort of watch list. That's how bad it is. It's really, really creepy. Meta, in fact, confirmed the document's authenticity and says it's updated its policy, with a spokesperson admitting the policy should have, quote, never been allowed in the first place. But still, lawmakers are outraged by this. Senator Josh Hawley, among others, is now demanding an investigation, saying that Meta only changed its rules now that it's been caught. He's also being joined by several other lawmakers as well, both Democrats and Republicans. Sadly, while this is disturbing, this is not new for Meta, given its track record on protecting children from sexual content. Last year, a Wall Street Journal investigation found that after just 3 minutes of making new accounts with the age set at the age 13, Instagram began promoting sexual videos to those accounts.
Boy, that's horrible. Sam, thank you for bringing this to our attention, man. You're right on. I applaud Josh Hawley for demanding this investigation. I think it's completely necessary and warranted. Listen, folks, should we really be surprised that a company that celebrates sexual degeneracy, Meta's a big supporter of the pride stuff, profits off the pornography industry, markets sexually explicit material to children, is now also in hot water for crafting AI bots that definitionally sexually abuse minors? I mean, Sam, you showed me some of the things that these bots were saying when prompted. That is verbal sexual abuse. I mean, you would be arrested. You would be arrested if you said something like that to a child, or at least you should be. Yeah, who knows? Maybe in a degenerate society like ours has become, and by God's grace, we'll get back to a point where we are punishing criminals instead of celebrating them, but you should be arrested for that. Now, of course, Meta, Sam, this is par for the course. They're doing something about it because they got caught. That's exactly what it is. If they didn't get caught, that none of this would have changed. So is this real repentance, real change? I wouldn't count on it. Folks,
well, and to clarify something, it'd be one thing, it'd still be bad, but it'd be one thing if Reuters did a report, did an investigation, spoke to the AI chatbots and said, oh, this is saying some really creepy things. Meta, did you know about this? And they said, oh, we need to tweak this because this is no good. Right. No, this is Meta's actual policy saying that this is okay.
Yeah, that's really concerning. That's really, really concerning. So that's exactly right. You know, folks, we can't be lulled to sleep by just how evil this stuff is. When you hear a headline like this, and you think, okay, yeah, it's really bad, but I'm not invested in Meta, so I'm not concerned about it. And it's good that you're not invested in Meta. You shouldn't be, because they're not biblically responsible. But don't get cavalier or calloused to how wretched and demonic this truly is. There's an unwritten rule, Sam, across many jailhouses in America. And I looked into this because, you know, sometimes when you hear things like this, you wonder, is it really true, or is it just kind of like legends that sprout up? But no, it's true.
You mean, Seth, you didn't learn about this during your 15 years in prison?
That's right. It's exactly
you didn't know Seth's a hardened criminal?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Here's the unwritten rule. If you get put into prison for doing something especially grotesque to children, your chances of survival are slim to none, and Slim just walked out of the room. You will probably not survive. Even among criminals, there are codes of honor. And one of the codes of honor is that criminals who do really, really bad things to kids will not survive. They will get a form of justice on them. If they're not handed the death penalty, many of them receive it in prison, where other criminals will jump them, they'll gang up on them, they'll kill them in their sleep, something like that. Your chances of survival dramatically decrease. I've seen several headlines in the past couple months of prisoners who, in acts of vigilantism, ended up killing some of their cellmates because the cellmates were convicted sexual predators of children in particular. There seems to be an understanding, which I actually believe, and listen, I don't think murder is a good thing. I think murder is bad. At the same time,
headline here, FISM is anti-murder.
Anti-murder. That said, this unwritten rule in jailhouses is, I think, an example of God's common grace, that even among criminals, there is still honor and there is still goodness. Meta does not seem to understand this, evidently. Listen, folks, there's no compromise in my book when it comes to protecting children. If something is on the edge of the line, if you're towing the line when it comes to sexual interaction with children, you have barreled through and crossed the line. There is no towing the line. You stay as far away from that line as you can. When it comes to children, it's disgusting. And Meta should be ashamed of this. Meta is a disgusting organization that should be ashamed of this. For a long time, they've been engaged in disgusting behavior when it comes to the usage of investor dollars. This is not surprising. So, folks, this is why it makes me so proud to know that Meta is not on our list. That we will not encourage you to invest one single cent into this company. Because this type of thing is despicable. Despicable. And for the Christian, companies like Meta, they profit off of pornographic material for children, this kind of stuff with the AI bots, propagating the LGBTQ worldview. Hopefully you're not surprised that those things go together, folks. Abortion along with it as well. It's all demonic. It's all from the same source, so it's no surprise. Shouldn't surprise you. All of those agendas directly harm children, by the way. Directly harm children. They are to be found nowhere in the BRI portfolio, and that will never change for us. We'll stand firm on that. You can count on it. Children need to be protected. They need to be taught to love and serve Jesus Christ. Not exploited. We can't exploit the little ones. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to see something really disturbing, the sociologist Jonathan Haidt, he did an experiment where he created an account on Instagram where he said, I'm going to pretend that I'm 13 years old. He set his age profile. He does a whole video about this. He says, I'm 13 years old. I'm a girl. I'm just going to see how Meta or Instagram interacts with me. So he liked puppy videos, kitten videos, all types of happy things that little girls would like. Within, I think, like 2 days, Meta started recommending videos about eating disorders, anorexia, body issues, depression, all sorts of terrible things. Nothing that he even tried to engage with in the first place. That's just what Instagram wanted to feed him. He even started applying filters on it to protect against that stuff, and it wasn't good enough. Meta still wanted to feed this harmful stuff to kids.
It's despicable, man. It really is. Really is despicable. Sam, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Folks, listen, it's an honor to stand with all of you as we invest in companies that aren't engaged in this stuff. This is how we're going to change it. This is how we're going to change it. Meanwhile, I think it's good to pray for public officials like Josh Hawley who are doing some really good work. I'm okay with my tax dollars going to that. If it's going to that, good with me. It's great stuff. Let's destroy all of this stuff because it really is evil. Elsewhere, Sam, let's take a look here. It seems like the words housing emergency have become more and more popular in the lexicon of some elected officials. Tell us why. What's going on here?
Specifically, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent telling the Washington Examiner on Monday that the Trump administration just might declare a national housing emergency this fall. Now, Bessent didn't go into details, but he did say they're looking at several things, including deregulation, perhaps some tariff exemptions for certain building materials, and also he encouraged the Fed to lower interest rates too, said that would help bring things down. This is becoming a major problem, of course. A Realtor.com report as of August found that only 28% of homes on the market right now are currently affordable to a medium income household.
So first of all, Sam, I love the obligatory Fed dig again. That was pretty funny. I got a kick out of that. In all seriousness, no, I think there is certainly a housing crisis in this country. Sam, I hope and pray. Here's my hope and prayer. Trump administration, please don't create a government program to address this. It's not going to work. Please don't do that. Let the common sense that individuals have to figure this stuff out, let that be the thing that figures it out, not a government solution.
I think California is the big case study to prove that doesn't work.
Doesn't work. This is where the cure is worse than the disease, believe me. The solution is not government involvement, folks. So then the question is, what is the solution? Well, maybe lowering interest rates could be a start. I think another solution might be a better one. This comes to the individual person, is proper debt management among young people. You got to make wise decisions that don't lead to the real burden of a 6-figure student loan bill as young folks start their first real job. I think that's a huge part of this, Sam.
I think Bessent's really looking at here deregulation. You were concerned about the government getting involved. He's saying, I want the government out of it. Reduce zoning regulations or all sorts of laws that make it more difficult to build homes and increase the supply. Awesome. So I think that's his major concern.
Well, I certainly hope that that's the that's what ends up happening. And I think you're exactly right, Sam. California is kind of a typecast of why that doesn't work. Interesting stuff there, folks. Boy, I really do appreciate you joining us this morning, being here with us. We've got Rachel Barkley coming up in the next segment. Quickly here, Alan saying, thanks, Seth. It's good info. Alan, I'm glad that you appreciated my answer to your question. And you mentioning that you are 58. Yep, a bit of a different situation than I'm in for sure. So it's something that you have to consider there. But I appreciate you so much, brother. Rachel Barkley up next here. Mark Minnella later on in the show. We've got a busy show. Make sure to say hello. If you have to leave us, hope you have a great rest of the day. For the rest of you, more financial issues coming up.
If you're like me and used to think managing your investments was overwhelming or just for the experts, think again. I used to believe I needed a financial analyst to handle everything, but financial issues showed me I could manage my own investments while staying true to my faith. It's completely transformed how I handle my finances. What felt like a foreign language is now simple. I can buy and sell stocks with confidence, knowing my investments align with my faith. And the best part, this empowering, life-changing guidance is affordable. Just $132 a year. FISM gave me the tools to restructure my portfolio, diversify, and track my investments, all in a God-honoring way. Their video library taught me how to steward what God has entrusted to me with wisdom. If you're ready to gain financial peace and manage your investments with purpose, I can't recommend Financial Issues enough. It's something anyone can do.
To learn more, go to financialissues.org.
If you don't get life right, you're not going to get all the other issues correct, period. It is the issue that impacts every other issue. Life is the central part of what keeps this republic together. It is the contract that the founding fathers passed down through multiple generations. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't have life, you don't have a republic. There is a temptation out there right now, and I want to just tell you we must resist it. There's this temptation that we cast this issue aside. How does that honor God? It doesn't. And if it wasn't for preborn, I would be super just confused and depressed, because there has never been, in my opinion, a more disjointed time in the pro-life movement. We need a machine to go up against the Planned Parenthood beast. Like, we have to play offense against the pro-abortion forces in this country, okay? We have to play offense. And preborn does it in this compassionate, merciful, godly way that is just so inspiring and amazing.
Welcome back, folks. Financial Issues. Wonderful to be here with you this morning. Let's take a look at the markets, folks, what we've got going on as they just opened a couple minutes ago. Mixed territory, pretty strong overall, though. The Dow Jones is right around the flat line. It's technically in the negative, but it's basically flat. The S&P 500 is up, creeping up towards 0.5%. It's right around 2/5. NASDAQ, in a somewhat of a mirror image from where it was yesterday, is up 0.75%. So a little bit stronger feeling from the markets, it seems, this morning. All right, folks, a special guest with me right now, joining me, Rachel Barkley. Rachel is the director of the Able Americans program at the National Center for Public Policy Research. Rachel has a decade of experience connecting members of Congress, think tank leaders, corporate stakeholders, media influencers around shared goals, overseeing strategies for multi-state issue campaigns. She has a fascinating personal story as well. It's made a huge impact in how she approaches public policy issues concerning healthcare, disability, safety net policy reform. She's truly an expert in this, and I'm thrilled to have her on. Rachel, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
I'm so glad to be here, Seth. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Rachel, could you just remind our listeners of this? What happened in your life that really kind of made you decide to want to make a difference in reforming the public healthcare system in our country?
Yeah, thanks for sharing my bio there. I'd worked in public policy for a decade and was due with our first baby. I'd been married 3 years, turning 30 years old, and I woke up one day paralyzed, and it was really unexpected, shocking. I've been healthy my whole life and had found a spinal cord tumor growing in the middle of my spinal cord up near my shoulders and neck, and became totally quadriplegic from the surgery to remove that tumor, and then have spent that was 6 years ago now, so the past 6 years fighting to get movement back. But I still, though, praise God, I can walk a bit, I still use a wheelchair 80% of the time.
Rachel, thanks so much for sharing that with us. It is truly a tremendous story and a testament of God's grace. I say amen to that. Well, let's move here now. And again, folks, talking to Rachel Barkley of the National Center for Public Policy. Rachel, Medicaid remains one of, I think, the largest drivers of spending in our federal government. And as such, it's a controversial topic. There are sadly many instances where the funding has been misused in various ways, whether by users or by the government. Tell us this, Rachel. How should Medicaid be properly used in this country? Let's start there.
Yeah, this is really critical because it's one of the major drivers of spending in this country. It's one of the largest programs. And when we think about Medicaid, we think about its original intent. So when it came into being in 1965, it was for the most vulnerable. So we're talking people with disabilities, the elderly, children, pregnant women. And Americans are a generous people, and we want to provide a safety net for those people who really need it. But over time, since the Affordable Care Act passed, it has grown exponentially. It has been expanded to an able-bodied adult population just based on your income level. And because of that, states have seen huge spikes in how many people are on Medicaid. And when we think about how best to protect a program that works and provide health care for people who need it, we should right-size the program to work well for the most vulnerable it was intended for, so people with disabilities, pregnant women, children, et cetera. But then we should encourage able-bodied adults without dependents to move into the private market, move into employment and independence, and ultimately, financial security from that. So I think we have a ways to go in shoring up the program and making it better for people who need it, but also encouraging people to transition off of Medicaid and into private insurance and the workforce where they can.
And so, Rachel, one of the big things we've been seeing recently is Trump's big, beautiful bill. And it's with an attempt to try to clean up a lot of these programs. Is the big, beautiful bill addressing this? And if so, how?
It definitely gets to waste, fraud, and abuse. And Medicaid is a program that states administer, even if the funds come from the federal government. And states have to make sure that there isn't fraud and abuse in their system. So that's one thing that the bill does. Another thing it does is it puts work requirements only on that able-bodied adult without dependents population. So if you are a single mom with kids under 6 years old, work requirements don't apply to you. If you're a person with disabilities, work requirements don't apply to you. If you're medically frail, work requirements don't apply to you. But if you are an able-bodied adult, you are required to work, volunteer, or have education for 20 hours a week. And so this will change the dynamic in that it will help people get back into the workforce with that requirement.
And Rachel, tell us, how are you, in the work that you're doing through the Able Americans program with the National Center, how are you helping to move the needle in the right direction when it comes to Medicaid and some of the abuses that we see with it?
That's right. Well, we're really focused on saying, hey, right size this and focus on the people who really need it, which are people with disabilities, really need Medicaid because their services aren't covered by private insurers. So home-based care is not covered by private insurance in almost all cases. So Medicaid's really essential for people who need care in their homes. And so we say, let's make those services better. So let's focus, funding's not unlimited. So we have to have priorities in Medicaid. And we think that should be a priority and help states make their caregiving services for people with disabilities better, these long-term care services, while helping people who could be on private insurance, could be working, get back into the workforce and reinvesting the dollars that covered those folks back into the vulnerable population.
Rachel, last week you penned an article on the National Center's website discussing two new reports aimed at improving the lives of Americans living with physical or mental disabilities. Can you touch on this for just a moment? What are these reports and how might they help Americans with disabilities?
Yeah, we have two new reports out at ableamericans.us, and one is on better mental health care services. So how do we provide more beds for people who have serious mental illness and substance abuse problems, which is a huge, huge issue in this country. And then second, how do we help people with disabilities have more financial independence and be able to work where they can? And this is through a tool called Able Accounts. And Able Accounts are 529 savings accounts that are available for people with disabilities that allows them to save without hitting asset and income limits in their benefits programs.
That's awesome. Rachel, thanks so much. Tell us one more time where we can read this article. Is it on the National Center's website?
This is on Able Americans website, so ableamericans.us.
ableamericans.us. That's great. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you on. Really quickly, tell us what's the best way for our listeners to be able to follow the work that you do?
Yeah, that website, ableamericans.us. Able Americans is on Instagram, and Able Americans is also on Twitter and Facebook.
Awesome. Rachel Barkley. Rachel, it's a pleasure to speak with you. I always enjoy our conversations, and I look forward to the next time I get to have you on. Thanks so much, Rachel. God bless.
Thank you, Seth. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, absolutely. Again, folks, that's Rachel Barkley, Director of the Able Americans Program at the National Center for Public Policy Research. Always a joy to get to speak with her. Let's get to a little chat rundown here, folks, a little bit more. James from South Carolina, great to see you there, brother. James in South Carolina. Eddie in Tennessee, good to see you as well. Lisa in Texas, interesting comment, Lisa. Food stamps are so abused. They should have sections that they can pick from: produce, bulk meat like roast ham, not lunch meat that's way overpriced, no energy drinks, bottled water, chips. Lisa, you're exactly right. There's this crazy trend out on social media right now of people who are on food stamps basically bragging about their food stamp hauls. So they're trying to get as much food as they possibly can on these and posting videos about it on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube.
Buying lobster and filet mignon.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. And it's almost a point of pride where in the old days, it used to be, food stamps was something that had kind of a sort of a necessary understanding of a little bit of shame around it because you used it as a place where you were trying to get to a point where you could have a job. We'll have to talk more about that on the other side of this break, but Lisa, it's interesting there for sure. The Ag Report's coming in right now, folks, and we'll be back right after this. Here's Craig Howard.
This is Craig Howgard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for September 3rd. Well, corn showed material strength yesterday, closing at a 6-week high and breaking through a downtrend, and has been the market's ceiling for the 2025 growing season. The strength came from fund buying as they purchased back a lot of their short position. I think they bought 15,000 contracts during yesterday's trade. We also saw corn conditions fall by 2%, down to 69% good to excellent. Problems in the wet early growing season and historically dry August have traders believing that we'll see the yield projection drop in September. As a result, it's at $4.23 per bushel. Soybean futures tumbled as the absence of Chinese demand continues to weigh on the market. At the same time, Argentina and Brazil have ramped up their export programs. In fact, September shipments from those nations are expected to run 70 million bushels higher than last year, with much of that heading to China. Domestically, soybean basis continues to slip as buyers brace for harvest pressure. November beans finished today 13.5 cents lower at $10.41. Wheat prices started the week under pressure, weighed down by a stronger U.S. dollar, softer global prices, and generally adequate world supplies. Minneapolis December wheat was 5 3/4 cents lower at 5.74 1/4. Kansas City dropped by 8.5 cents to close at 5.11 1/4. And we had Chicago down 6 cents at 5.28 1/4. Cotton futures continued their slide towards the low end of the recent trading range. We had December futures ending the day 49 points lower at 66.05. Livestock futures were mixed. October live cattle were 12.5 cents lower at $239, 52.5 cents per hundredweight. September feeder cattle dropped by 52.5 cents as they ended the day at $364.25 per hundred. And October lean hog futures were 52.5 cents higher at $95.55 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures closed lower for the fourth consecutive session. To closing bell, we had September 18 points lower at $17.93. This has been Craig Haugard with your Financial Issues Egg update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Bring back free speech to America.
Zuckerberg drops a bombshell, reversing Meta's content moderation policies.
I started building social media to give people a voice. It's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram.
Times are changing, and it's the everyday American who is pushing the changes.
People have had enough of what these companies are doing.
Money talks. So why not have it represent your values? Get started at financialissues.org.
Where's Mima? We found out Shepard's diagnosis when I was about 17 weeks pregnant. We learned that he was going to need a series of surgeries after he was born in order to give him what they considered a normal life. And we weren't sure how this worked.
Yeah, very emotional, very, very broken. And as my wife just said, not sure how this worked. And called Samaritan, and they said, you just go have that baby. You leave the rest to us.
And just to hear the confidence on the other end of the phone of this is not something that you need to be concerned about at all. You focus on the health of your family, the health of your baby, and we will walk with you every step of the way.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. And on top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn. The donations that you give actually make a difference. Last year, 59,000 babies were saved because of what you have done with your generosity.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Thanks for being with us here, folks. It's a good day on financial issues. Always a blessing to spend the first hour of the day with all of you. 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, special time. I always enjoy it, and I appreciate each of you so much listening and watching. We've got, let's see here. So we were talking to Lisa for just a moment there. Yeah, Lisa, it's interesting to see those social media trends happening. Certainly, there are many people who actually need the food stamps, but sadly, there are also many who seem to abuse them. And not only that, but they seem pretty cavalier and pretty showy about it too, at least on social media lately. So it's tough to see for sure. But at any rate, folks, a special guest joining me once again, Mark Minnella. Mark Minnella, one of our contributors here at FISM, financial expert. Mark, welcome back, brother. I always enjoy our conversations, and it is a delight to talk to you again.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you, brother. Yes, sir. So, Mark, got a couple questions for you. You have decades of financial experience in this place. We've discussed a lot of topics. Want to pose you.
I'm old again.
Yeah, listen. A crown for the aged, brother. That's all I'm saying. If I can look as handsome as Mark does when I'm Mark's age, and I'm not going to say how old you are, I'll be a happy man, Mark. That's all I can say about that. I'd like to pose a couple questions to you here, brother, that have been on my mind lately. So let's get this started here. First one is a good one. This question says, I was told that IRAs with beneficiaries listed will go through probate with the rest of my estate, my home, etc., things like that. Is this true or not? Let's start there.
Well, IRAs generally don't go through probate. have a beneficiary statement to them. So they generally don't go through it if you have a valid beneficiary designation on your IRA. So yeah, no, that's not generally true. There are a couple of areas where it could go through probate if you don't have your beneficiaries lined up on your IRA. And why, I don't know why you wouldn't, because most brokerages and most brokerages that I know, they actually require some sort of beneficiary in there to open up an IRA. But things can happen. Seth, for example, imagine your beneficiary predeceases you and you don't have a contingent on there, then it would go through probate because you don't have a beneficiary. Or oftentimes, not often, sometimes people name their estate as beneficiary, and then it will go through probate if you do that. So if you have an individual listed on there as your designated beneficiary and a contingent, you should be okay. You should be okay and not have to go through probate. One of the things I would suggest is think about, you ever see those commercials on TV, it's that time of year, it's almost New Year's Eve, and they're telling you to change the batteries in your alarms, your fire alarm. Yeah. Well, think of your beneficiaries and all your documents like that. Every year you should check your beneficiaries to make sure they're up to date, to make sure the contingent is there, make sure no one's passed away that you had named, so that it doesn't have to go through probate.
And Mark, I probably even would maybe, and you can feel free to speak to this also, but even in that checking process, you probably want to make sure that the information is all up to date as well. So for example, if you have someone who's a beneficiary, they don't live with you, they live somewhere else, but their address has changed or something like that, it's probably good to keep that up to date as well. Am I correct?
Well, it makes it simpler for those left behind.
Yeah, sure.
But in general, if you have somebody's name and social on there, it's going to go to them no matter where they live, but it makes it easier to contact them for the broker-dealer. Because what happens is upon death, the broker-dealer, the advisory, whatever you're using, they then will transfer the assets to the beneficiary's accounts. They can't do that if they can't get in contact with the beneficiary. So even though it's easier to zoom through those applications, it's best to put down as much information as possible. And again, review them regularly.
Yeah.
And have a contingent beneficiary, if possible, a tertiary as well.
Yeah. Folks, we're talking to Mark Minnella here, and we're speaking about this idea of probate versus non-probate. I think it's important for our audience members to know, because there might be new people who are listening here who don't understand. If something passes through probate, that just means it has to go through, the legal court process, a longer process than something just passing directly to someone. Mark, could you speak to that for just a moment here? Why could the probate process actually end up being a real headache for someone who has just lost someone and they're trying to figure all this out? Why is it so much better for it not to pass through probate?
Because it goes through the courts. First of all, it can take time. Secondly, there are expenses with the courts. But there is a positive aspect to probate. If you have any sizable estate, you want something to go through probate, because what happens is after the probate is over, nobody can come against that estate for any reason. So it closes down any claims against the estate. That's a positive thing. On the other side, like we said, there are some minor charges, and it can take quite a while to get through it, depending on the complexity of your estate. While we were talking about this, I was thinking, he brought up the idea of avoiding probate. I wonder if he thought about the idea also of transferred on death statements on anything that he has a title to, like his house or his car. That too can help those items avoid probate. You might want to look into transfer on death beneficiary designation, so that if you own a car or an RV or some property in Florida or something that you want to go to somebody or a group of people, you can put a TOD on those titles to make that happen. That's something worth looking into as well, to avoid probate.
Yeah.
And expedite things.
That is awesome. Thank you, brother. And I'm so glad you said that, because for someone my age, I know a lot of people probably they're just not thinking about this. And we tend to assume, well, I've got a lot of years left. What a good reminder, though, brother, that the Lord numbers our days. He knows when our days are up, and it might come sooner than we think. And not to be morbid with that, but we just need to know. When the Proverbs model for us, Lord, teach us to number our days. That's what it's talking about. Is we need to know, we need to be ready to die at any moment.
Yeah, well, better than I think any true believer is ready to go home to their Father at any moment.
Amen.
The thing that we're really talking about is how to make it easy on those that haven't had the benefit of getting to be in the presence of their Father like that.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to lose somebody, especially if it's somebody close like a spouse or a child or something. But to have all these financial situations not taken care of and to complicate issues, it makes it very hard. And that's what, by the way, a lot of crime is done after somebody dies, because they know they're grieving, they know they're not thinking straight, and so they prey upon that I got to get something done attitude. So it's best to have things in order so that you can bless those you left behind.
Well said, brother. Thank you. Here's one more question for you, Mark. Might be the last one that we have time for here. So this question says, I'm 45 years old. I'm employed. I've never invested before, and I have no idea even where to begin. Where and how do I start investing?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. I never, being in the industry all these years, it's like, isn't everybody investing?
Right, exactly.
But here, that's a great question. There's several. First thing you got to do is make sure pre-investing things are in order. We've talked about this before, Seth. Having that moat around your castle or the emergency fund, the auto-replenishing emergency fund, so that you don't have to tap into long-term investments for the tyranny of the immediate, so that's very important to have. Once that's established, then where to invest? Well, maybe we could come up with a sequence here a little bit. Think about, he says he's working, so maybe he has a 401k at work. Now, I'm not saying that you should do that right away, but if there's a match and you are able to invest with biblical integrity in there, that's a great way to start. You just have it withheld from your check. It goes in, they match it. And let's just say it's a 1% or 100% match of the first 3%. I saw that a lot over my years in 401ks. If that's true, effectively, you make 100% return the first year, not even including any returns from the growth of it, or if there's growth of the product. So you want to take advantage of that match if you're able to invest with biblical integrity without grieving God's heart. A lot of 401ks don't let you do that, but here's the good news. If you might go to human resources and say, hey, you don't offer me anything in the 401k. After that, there's things like, let's say that you have more money to invest or you don't have the option of 401k. I would suggest something like a Roth IRA. And a Roth, not a traditional IRA, because a Roth doesn't defer your taxes to the future. What a Roth does is it eliminates taxes. When 5 years after you put money in, or age 59 and a half, whichever is longer, you can take all of it out at any time without any tax implications, which is very nice. So that would be my second idea for it. Of course, you could just open up a simple or just a regular investment account, individual investment account, or a traditional IRA if you need the tax deductions today. So I guess to bring it down, if in the perfect world, I would do the 401k with the match first, and then I would do a Roth IRA. And then if you have more left over after you reach that 7,000 limit, you could go back and add more to your 401k.
Mark, that's awesome, brother. I appreciate that so much. I love listening to your insight. It's always a joy getting to have you on the program, and I look forward to the next time, brother. Folks, it was a quick show. The end has already come, but listen, tomorrow, 9:05 Eastern is going to come again, and we're excited to be there with you. Until then, remember, everything you have belongs to the Lord. Let's be found good and faithful stewards of everything that God has given to us. Make sure to check out the partner commentary, folks. It was excellent. Give it a good read and continue to invest in a way that honors God. We'll see you next time on Financial Issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.